Alright, welcome to the tutorial on how to install Drupal. There are a variety of ways to install Drupal, but in this tutorial we are going to look at one of the more basic ways, which is how to install Drupal on a hosted website. So in this tutorial what you're going to need is a few prerequisites. The first prerequisite is that you're going to need to have some form of file transfer program that can upload and download files to your web server. And the second prerequisite that you're going to need is that you're going to need a database on the web hosting provider. Now, in this tutorial, I'm going to be using the FileZilla FTP client to upload and download files, and I'm going to be using the web interface for PHP MyAdmin. And this is going to look maybe a little bit different for you because you may be using different programs, but hopefully whenever you see me do this, you'll be able to make the adjustments that you need to adapt this tutorial for your setup. So the first thing that we're going to want to do here is I just want to show you where to get FileZilla, because that's one of the programs that you might not have. FileZilla is a free open source FTP program. So what you would want is the FileZilla client. There's one for Mac OS X, Linux, and Windows. So you would just download and install any one of those clients and you would be able to use FileZilla. So I've already done that, and what I'm going to do now is we're going to go to my website, and I'm going to log in to PHP MyAdmin. So here I'm going to log in with my user account, and so this is my PHP MyAdmin console for the database. And in this case, I'm using the MySQL database server. And in this, all I really need to do is just click on the Privileges tab. And what I can do right now is add a user. And I'm going to add a user called Drupal tutorial. And I'm going to do a little bit of security here. I'm going to make sure that this user can only log in from the local host, which is the web server itself. And I'm going to generate a password here. Take that password here. And what I'm going to do is create a database with the same name and grant all privileges for that database. So I'm going to end up with a Drupal-tutorial username and a Drupal-tutorial database. And at this point I can just press the go button and I've created the database. Now I need to know the name of the database, the name of the user, the password, and the host in which the database is hosted on. In my case it's localhost, but in your case you may use a database hosted by your web service provider. You should contact them to find out how to access your MySQL database. Most web service providers provide that service. Okay, so now I created a database and I have the password. So the next thing that I'm going to need to do is download the actual Drupal program. So what we can do here is we're just going to open up a web browser window, and you get Drupal from Drupal.org. And here what we're going to do is click on download and extend, and for this tutorial what we're going to do is that we're going to download Drupal 7. So I am coming to Drupal 7, and whenever you look here what you'll notice is that you're going to see two different versions of it. You're going to see Drupal 7.0, which is in the green, and then you're going to see Drupal 7.x-dev. And the difference between these two downloads is that the recommended release is the production quality release, and the 7.x dev is the current version that is being worked on. Now, in some cases, you may want to actually use the development release for some modules because that usually has the bug fixes in it. Now, here we can see that this version was created on January 5th, and this one was created on January 29th. So this version right here on the 29th has fixes that were added between the 5th and the 9th of January. For this demonstration, what we're going to do is we're just going to download the regular production version of Drupal. So I click on the tar file, and I'm going to save it onto my computer. And after I do this, what I'm doing is just going to open it up to unarchive it. And I lost my window here. And I have Drupal 7 here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the files that are in this website, or in this folder that I just downloaded and extracted. Max will easily open up the file. On a PC, you may want to get a program called 7-zip to be able to extract tar files, because some versions of Windows I don't think can extract tar files, which is what Drupal's packaged in, and also all the modules are packaged in. And so now I have these, and what I'm going to have to do is go open up my FTP program. And so I'm going to, in FileZilla, you'll see at the top we have a quick connect option here. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to open up my FTP server. And I'm going to type in a username here. And the port, and most people use port 22 for their SFTP, but I changed it on mine. So here, instead of 22 for SFTP, I'm using 2220. And so now I'm going to hit the enter key, and I'm going to open up my website. I get a little warning here, don't worry about it. And so here, in GoDaddy or in other sites, you might find that you have a www directory, or you have a public docs or htdocs directory for your web server where your web pages go into. And here I have a www directory. And so this is my web server. I'm just going to double click on this. And all I have to do is just take my files here that I have, and then I'm just going to drag them over. And I'm just uploading all the files. Alright, so now that I uploaded all those files, you're going to have to do a couple things. The first thing that you're going to need to do in your Drupal site is go into a folder called the Sites folder. This is where you the configuration files for your website are stored. And what you need to do is go into, what you'll see is you have a folder called All, and you have a folder called Default. The All folder is used to distribute modules and themes and files to all of your sites, and the Default folder is used to distribute to files, themes, and modules to the default website. In a more advanced installation scenario, you can actually use Drupal, or one installation of Drupal, to host multiple websites. So here for default, what I have to do is I'm going to go into default, and we have a file called default.settings.php. And what needs to happen here is that I have to make a copy of this file and rename it to settings.php. So what I'm going to need to do here is do a little, oops. I'll make this a little bit smaller, sorry about that. And what I'm going to need to do is take settings.php, oops, and I'm going to drag it down to my desktop. And so what I have to do with this file is just rename it settings.php, and then I have to take it back to my FTP program. And put it back there. And then temporarily what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to give a permission to this to let the public read, write, and execute. And so I'm going to set the permissions on here. And so I set the permissions on that. And whenever you see permissions that say everyone, they're not talking about the entire world. They're talking about everybody that has a system account on the web server. So temporarily this is safe to do this, because what's going to happen is that the Drupal installer is actually going to need to write to this folder. Now the next one I have to do is I'm going to have to create a directory here called files. And the files directory is used to store files uploaded to Drupal by your users. And the files directory, in this case, what we're going to do is I'm just going to assign the ability for all users of the system to be able to read, write, and execute onto the files folder. I can actually just maybe make it a little more secure here and take off the execute bit, because we don't really need to execute any of the files here. And it'll really just depend on how you have your web server set up, what you want this permission to actually be, and how it's going to work. But what the bottom line is that Drupal needs to be able to upload into this directory. So I'm just going to click OK. And now Files has the permissions. And so those are the two major steps that you need to do on the web server. So just to review, what you need to be able to do is to copy, not rename, the default.settings.php file into settings.php, and allow the web server to be able to write to it. And then secondly, you need to be able to copy or create a files directory and allow the web server to write into the files directory. Later, after the installation completes, we're going to go back and make the settings file more secure. So, but at this point, let's go and install Drupal. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my Drupal site, and you can see now I have a little Drupal logo, and I'm ready to start the installation process. I'm going to do a standard installation or a minimal. If you were doing development, maybe you might want to start with a minimal, but most people are going to want to start with a standard installation. Here I'm just going to click the Save and Continue, and the Save and Continue on this, because I'm only going to install it in English. And here, this is wherever we're going to be asking for the database name. So here I had Drupal tutorials, if I remember. and the username is Drupal, and I'm going to put my password in. And if you're using Drupal on a server other than the localhost, you're going to want to change the advanced options here and choose a different host. You may need a different port. Some database servers have different ports. And the table prefix. So one of the things that you might want to do here is if you're using a shared database where you maybe only have one database, you can put a prefix on the table such as Drupal tutorials, and this will be appended to the table names. And now what this lets you do is you can share the database with more than one installation of Drupal in case you need to do this process again for a different reason, or you only have one website and you want to do development on one, and maybe you're doing you test something out and then you want to go back to a previous version, and you don't want to create new databases for each versions. You can use the table prefix, and so there's a couple different reasons why you might want to do that. And in this case, I'm just going to put the table prefix of Drupal tutorials 1 _, and now I'm going to press the save and continue button. And here I have an error which you might experience. And so what we're seeing here is that we have a little bit of an error here, and I'm just going to pause the tutorial right. And so I fixed it. I had an S instead of, it was Drupal tutorial and not Drupal tutorials. A lot of times you should read this error message right here just to see what it's telling you. It gives you maybe some information. And here I should be able to press the save and continue button, and now Drupal is going to happily install itself. And here it gives you a little notification that says you should remove write permissions to settings.php, which we'll do in a minute. And I'm going to set the site name here for Drupal tutorials. I'm going to set the email address, my email, put a username. You could use this. Now at this point, what it's going to ask you is, it's asking for basically the root account on the site. This is a special account that inherits all privileges on the site all the time. So this account is the only account that can do everything and anything on the site at any point in time. So this is like the master account. No other account has as higher privileges as this. So here what I'm going to do is just add a new name. So I'm going to call this admin. And it already populated my email address, so I'm just going to put a password. And it tells you whether or not your password is any good. Scroll down a little bit, set my default country to the United States. And I have my default time zone automatically set. I'm in the New York area. And here I'm going to check to receive updates automatically, and I'm going to receive email notifications. So I'm going to click the save and continue button. And at this point, now I have successfully installed my new Drupal 7 website. So this concludes this tutorial. We're going to pick up with the next tutorial on how to actually start to use your website.